I don't want no oil, a spoil in my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things a-creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!
Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever and whenever you are. My name is Joe DeMare, and I'm here with my fabulous co-host, Rebecca Wood.
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, Rebecca Wood. And together, Rebecca and I are going to be bringing you an hour of incredible radio called For a Green Future. For a Green Future is a show where we talk about ecology, the environment. And we talk about it in the way it affects you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of your friends and your family, and the plants growing in your garden, and the trees at the park that you walk past, and the birds and the bees and the fish and all the critters, because, like it or not, all of us are wrapped up together in this great big ball we call planet Earth. And I've got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to have a special guest. At 10:15, we're going to talk with Lisa Maatz from Ohio Citizen Action about some of the shenanigans going on down there in Columbus at the state government. People getting money that really shouldn't be getting that money. Then we'll hear from our advertisers and patrons. And then Rebecca will be talking to us about an interesting topic.
Yeah, Poutwater Pond in Holden, Massachusetts, subtitled Swamps versus Bogs, Know the Difference.
Oh yeah, it's a very important difference, yeah. Great, and then we'll have ecological news, and hopefully at some point during the show we'll be hearing from you at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. This week we won't be able to take text messages. We hope to have that corrected by next week. But so the only way to get on the air, we hope you do get on the air, is to give us a call at 877-909-1007. And so regular listeners to the show know that this little first section here is where I like to just sort of vent about things that I've noticed during the week. And one thing that I did this morning, and I really shouldn't do this, but I turned on the TV. I had my show prep all done, my notes were all ready, and I was like, well, I'll just turn on the TV and see what's going on. And I turned over to that Defy network, and they had another show. I complained last week about X-Men, which is a terrible anti-environmental show, but this week they took it to another level. They showed this program from 2018, and the name of the program is Truck Night in America. And what it is, it's a celebration of people who build these big honking trucks with the great big tires and stuff, so that they can wipe out nature, so that they can literally drive over things like swamps and critters in the swamps, and so they had this big game show where they, quote unquote game show, reality show, where they had 50 people who had made these big terrible trucks, which I think they get about 6 miles to the gallon once you factor in.
There are all these country and western songs about like getting out and getting your pickup stuck and getting it in mud.
Right.
I don't think that real country guys want to do this. For them, getting pickup trucks is something out of mud is something you have to do, not something that's recreational, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, it can be. I mean, you can spend an afternoon. I actually did that a few times when I was like really young, when I was a Boy Scout. Our Scoutmasters had a big Suburban, and he kept taking it back in the woods. And yeah, we'd get stuck, and so you'd have to get out the come along, and you'd have like 10 Boy Scouts pushing for the back while the Scoutmaster was cranking the come along to try to pull it. I mean, and like I say, you could spend an afternoon doing that.
There you go.
And so I could see the appeal.
Okay, but are you supposed to be learning about like the woods and nature and outdoorsmanship? Are you supposed to be learning about how to get cars unstuck?
Well, we learned
Boy Scouts.
We learned both, and the ironic thing, of course, is that in the process of learning about the nature and stuff, I came to realize just how bad tearing the nature up with the trucks is.
How about you need more songs about getting your boots muddy, you know, in your actual boots instead of the truck tires.
Yeah, well, but these guys on this program have never learned that lesson, and so this was the finals, and where they had like whittled people down, and they had something called the Green Hell, which you know, speaking as a green, I can, yeah, it pretty much was, because what they did is they took 3 miles of wilderness in Georgia and just bulldozed it down to the dirt to build this huge track where they had piled up junk cars, you know, and it didn't look like they took the time to drain the oil pans or anything like that. And so they created this huge track which was designed to get trucks stuck in it. And it was just, you know, it was an ecological disaster. I mean, they should have been, basically, you know, they should have sent police in there to arrest them. Instead, turns out, I was reading an article about it in the Augusta Chronicle. Police were actually providing security for free. And in fact, the whole thing couldn't have happened without a whole bunch of tax credits from the state of Georgia.
That's special. Who is going to go out there and mess with you while you're trying to bulldoze the wilderness? Exactly.
Maybe they're afraid environmentalists might show up.
Yeah, did they inform the environmentalists in advance of this?
Well, it was in the papers, so it could have happened. But it's funny how scared they are.
I don't think it was actually gonna. You know, I don't think anybody had any plans.
No, they didn't, and nobody did show up. But it is interesting how afraid they are of environmentalists who are, as a group, you know, very nonviolent and never show up with weapons in these things, unlike some other groups which we have learned about that they didn't seem to be afraid of. So it's a case of like they're afraid of the wrong people, basically. Anyway, 3 miles of Georgia wilderness completely bulldozed down to the dirt, including, and this was the part that really got me, they called them the cliffs of danger or something like that. They actually went along this river and clear cut all the trees on the edge of the cliffs
so they can
down
jump
to the
over
river.
it or something?
No, so that they could ride along it with the possibility of toppling over into the river.
Okay.
Yeah, that was supposed to be the danger part.
Well, just, you know, topple over your truck if that's how you get your kicks. It just has to be pushed. I don't know.
Well, the thing is, if you remove all the vegetation from the edge of a river,
yes, mudslides.
You get mudslides, and so, you know, within, I'm sure this
then
happened.
You get erosion. You get pollution of the stream. You get stuff dying because there's not enough oxygen in there anymore.
Yeah, right,
That's
exactly.
a really special plan.
This was 2018, and there's no way that riverbank held up for any, you know, I'm sure it collapsed into the river the very next rainfall. So just another horrible show, and just another example that literally our tax dollars are being used to encourage this culture that it's cool to like run stuff over and tear stuff up and bulldoze stuff down. I mean,
if you want to prove how tough you are, get out of your car where you can actually, you know, do a mountain bike or something where you can actually get hurt, you know?
Mountain bikes are destructive, but certainly less destructive than these big trucks.
Yeah.
And it was you know, they were talking about part of the course was going through this swamp, which they had bulldozed the track through the swamp where there were lots of snakes, and they're like, you know, rattlesnakes and cottonmouths, and they're like, oh, aren't we, you know, big and macho?
Which are completely harmless so long as you stay out of the swamp.
Yeah. So I thought I'd complain about that. And our guest is on the line, so we will be going to her shortly. But there's one other thing I wanted to complain about, and that was an email I got yesterday. And those of you who listen to the show for a while know that I ran for U.S. Senate in 2016, and somewhere in Wikipedia is enshrined a picture of me that was taken for that campaign, and it's been there, sitting there for 6 years. It's not. There were actually two pictures. And I got this email from Wikipedia that somebody has challenged the picture because the copyright holder didn't explicitly give permission to use it. The thing is, I'm the copyright holder. I'm the one who took the picture of myself. It was a selfie, and that's very clearly laid out in the thing. And I did all the proper Wikipedia stuff to show that, to describe that. But what people are doing is going through and they just challenge these things. And so some percentage of them will just be erased. And the name of the guy who's challenging this, the username, is quote unquote Minorax, Minorax. And it looks to be, my opinion, it looks to be like he's someone that's been hired to just go through and try to erase all traces of minor parties on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Which, the minor parties, like the Green Party, often are the only ones that bring up these environmental issues or other important social issues, and to sort of try to erase us from history, because, in that run, I got almost 90,000 votes in 2016 as running as the Green Party U.S. Senate candidate, and I got to hold, a couple people's feet to the fire, and, it was. I'm glad I did it. It was a wonderful thing. But there's some people who would prefer to pretend that literally there's only two parties, that nobody has any other opinions, and the only thing that matters are the Republican Democrat Party, and that is just patently false. And so,
which is kind of been successful, because like the other day, some friend of mine on Facebook made a comment critical of the Democratic Party about something. And somebody immediately shared a photo called the Trump chain, and under it said, "Oh, well, I'll see you in prison." And I like, first of all, okay, obviously it's completely erased from his conscience. He wasn't even doing the, if you're green, if you're pro-Trump, that you're helping Trump. No, he really didn't honestly occur to him that there were any other parties.
Yeah, well, and
also you can't, as I commented, you cannot actually put somebody in prison for how they vote or for being critical of the Democratic Party.
Right, and it's just another example of how information is being constantly whittled away and reshaped, and actual historical stuff is getting wiped from the collective consciousness, because there's people who want it wiped. And there's actually, it's been documented, there are people who are paid to go through Wikipedia and change stuff. So it's a horrible thing, but it means, just keep taking Wikipedia with a grain of salt, because a lot of people are in there trying to reshape reality to suit their remembrance. And just a reminder, I actually did run. Even if they succeed in wiping me out from Wikipedia, it actually happened, I remember. All right, well, and something else that's actually happening and constantly happening are sort of dirty tricks up in Columbus there, where we learned with HB6 just how corrupt Ohio's state government is when it comes to things like energy policy. And our special guest here, Lisa Maatz from Ohio Citizen Action, has some information about the most recent outrage, one that it's a little something that, might have just passed by without people even noticing it, but Ohio Citizen Action caught it and is pointing it out to everybody, and I think it's important that we know and pay attention to this. So, Lisa, are you there?
I am. Hi, Joe. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
Of course.
Could you just remind everybody about your title and who you're with and so forth?
Sure. I am happy to say I'm the senior advisor over at Ohio Citizen Action, which is a statewide membership organization. We work on climate issues and pro-democracy issues, public health issues here in Ohio. And our latest campaign is called Crime with DeWine. Yes, we said that. Crime with DeWine. And it's crimewithdewine.com where you can find out more. But it's specific to what you just mentioned, Joe. We have been asking the governor and his lieutenant governor to say no to all contributions from regulated utilities. Now, earlier in the year, he said no to First Energy contributions, from First Energy Corporation, the one so connected to that $61 million bribery scandal that Ohio's been embroiled in. But it was a meaningless gesture because First Energy actually put a moratorium on their contribution. So, the governor was trying to pull a fast one and claim credit for something, he wasn't even doing.
Wow.
And then, of course...
Yeah, so it's like, oh, you're not giving out donations? Well, I refuse to accept any donations from you.
That's right. That's right. And he wanted to wear the white hat for that, right? Which is really frustrating.
Wow.
And then, Ohioans will tell you, of course, most recently, horrible stuff happening with AEP, the dominant power provider in central Ohio, with those horrible power outages, right? Where they rolled through the neighborhoods and didn't tell folks what was coming, and people lost money and in terms of all their food, and 3-4 days without power. It's going to continue through the summer. And here we have Governor DeWine taking a $13,000 contribution from AEP while all this is happening. So it's absolutely outrageous. And unfortunately, though, par for the course with this particular governor's relationship with these regulated utilities.
Wow. Yeah, so the AEP, that's American Electric Power.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually, area-wise, they're kind of like the biggest power supplier in the state, right, in terms of...
Yeah, here's the thing that's interesting about AEP. They're one of the biggest providers in the state, along with First Energy, but they are the biggest provider in central Ohio. And here's the kicker, because this is something we've talked about, you and I, Joe, before, is, with the HB6 bill that was called the worst energy policy in the nation, there was a huge bailout of the coal plants. And AEP is the primary shareholder in OVEC, which is the company for these coal plants got this enormous $50 million a year bailout, that we're paying on our electric bills every month. So, here they got a huge bailout. They've also been implicated in HB6 related scandals and money that they gave to dark money groups that were part of that whole scandal. Mr. DeWine is still giving money to them, and they're happily shutting off the power with absolutely no notice during a heat wave when, people's, public health is at stake, financial resources are at stake. It's really quite astounding, and of course he doesn't want to acknowledge any of it.
Yeah, it is astounding that he would take money from that company at this time when literally so many Ohioans are getting hurt by it. I mean, I'm going off memory here, but it was like a 250,000 people who had their power off for multiple days, and so we're losing food in their freezers and suffering all kinds of stuff.
That's right, and there's been concerns that these power outages may have disproportionately affected poor neighborhoods and people of color. And AEP has said, well, it was really just related to where the transformers were and the circuits. Well, you and I both know, Joe, that a lot of major industrial stuff, when it comes to, things like these coal plants, things like circuits, happens in poor neighborhoods. That's who they take advantage of, right? We know that there are disproportionate health consequences from climate change and pollution in poor neighborhoods. So, the excuse that they gave was not acceptable. But I'll tell you something else about this AEP contribution that's really interesting to us. Last year, in 2021, he got a $10,000 contribution from them and returned it, saying that he was doing it because that was when he was considering some, placements on the Public Utility Commission of Ohio, and there were things going on with HB6. So I ask you, Joe, what's the difference between 2021 and 2022? Why is he willing to take the money this year it's just really frustrating,
Yeah.
the inconsistency, and quite frankly, I think the profiteering going on.
Yeah, the only difference I can see, is time. I mean, HB6 is no longer in the headlines on the front pages. But B, he may actually have a credible challenger in this election. The Democrats may actually have somebody who might be able to unseat him this time. So I guess maybe he's a little more desperate for money. But
that's true. I think he's finding himself in a tighter race than expected. Certainly, some of the other politics about redistricting and abortion politics have come into play. But the other thing I think that's really crazy about this, of course, is that he keeps saying the right thing, right? So there's lip service. Well, I would be up for maybe making some changes about how public utility commissioners are appointed, but has he done anything about it besides the lip service? No. He said he would be open to maybe repealing that big OVEC coal bailout, that half of which is going to an Indiana power plant. But he's not done anything to help pass the bill that's, of course, mired down in the state legislature. So we've been challenging him through the Crime with DeWine campaign, that he needs to stop the lip service and start putting his money where his mouth is, to not take money from these regulated utilities and to go for real reform that actually helps consumers. Because right now, Ohio consumers are getting hosed by their utilities, and anyone will tell you the bills have been going up. But part of why they've been going up is because of these bailouts. And that story has not been widely told.
Right. And I think it's important to remember that these things, these donations and this kind of influence result in bad energy policy. That's the bottom line. That's why we're so concerned about it here on For a Green Future, because you can't get to the green future if there's people passing out money to the politicians saying, okay, go to the other way, go to like a brown future. And I just want to say it always amazes me just how cheap it is to buy a politician.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking $13,000 here, which sounds like a lot of money, but AEP is getting literally hundreds of millions of dollars from these House Bill 6 charges that have been added to everybody's bill. So for
they're getting $290,000 a day from my pocketbook and your pocketbook, Joe. It's $50 million a year, over $700 million over 10 years, directly from us to them. It's literally siphoning off money from everyday consumers to these powerful corporations. And the other thing about that $13,000 contribution, remember, that's the one that's direct from them, from their PAC. So what we also need to know is, well, how much money has their board of directors given to Governor DeWine? How much money has AEP and the board of directors and other officers of the corporation given to, say, the National Republican Governors Association that they're using? So there's ways that they give additional donations that then get funneled to Mr. DeWine that, are skillfully hidden because of our broken campaign finance system.
Yeah. And it also kind of reminds me of what First Energy did in the preparation for getting House Bill 6 through, which was, they picked 12 Republicans and gave them tons of money in their primaries so that they would beat the more sort of conservative, the more traditional Republicans, and replace them with hand-picked people whose purpose was to put House Bill 6 into law. And those have turned out...
whose purpose was to put Householder back in charge and then put House Bill 6 into law, right? So we not only got, as a courtesy from them, if we want to call it that, one of the most corrupt House speakers in history, but then we got the worst energy policy in the country, and all for the bargain price of $61 million, which, by the way, Joe, next week is the scandalversary. It'll be 2 years since kind of the news broke about the corruption related to the passage of House Bill 6.
Right. And I remember, when we were fighting House Bill 6, and you guys were definitely right there in the front lines in that battle. and it felt like corruption. It smelled like corruption. I mean, whenever you get up there and give the facts and the legislators just ignore them, you're like, there's got to be something more going on here. And this time, I mean, absolutely there was. And now we know for sure there was corruption there.
Yeah, no, I mean, and there's going to be more that comes out, of course. And this is part of why I would really encourage your listeners to go with crimewithdewine.com, because what they'll find there is not only a system where they can send a letter to the governor about, tell him, speak their mind about how they feel about this, but they'll also see a series of videos. My favorite of which, Joe, you're going to love this, is called The Bribery Bunch. It's a play off The Brady Bunch, and it's got the 9 people kind of implicated in various parts of the House bill scandal, including those that have obviously pled guilty, been indicted, so on and so forth. So people got to go see that video. We've been having a lot of good luck sharing it on social media to make people aware. And we've gotten thousands of calls and emails to the governor saying, stop taking this money, start making real reforms at PUCO. You are the sitting governor, and, you need to be advocating for consumers, especially in this climate. And so we're not going to give up, and we're going to keep calling it what it is, which is Crime with DeWine.
All right, here. So we are familiar with that Bribery Bunch tune. We played it on the air.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Wasn't that fun?
It was.
Remember that?
Yeah, it was fun. Unfortunately, when I tried to upload it to the YouTube version, YouTube flagged it as copyright infringement for the tune, so I wasn't able to keep the melody there. But I kept the images on the YouTube version.
Send me a message offline, because I'll talk to our digital person and see if we can't fix that for you.
Yeah, good. So, all right. Well, thanks so much, Lisa. And you've mentioned the crimewithdewine.com. How about if people want to follow what Ohio Citizen Action is doing? What's the best way to go about that?
Yeah, so our website is ohiocitizen.org. So just again, ohiocitizen.org. And you can sign up for our email list there. You can find our social media channels, Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and all that good stuff. So please follow us, because you'll get not only the latest campaign stuff from Crime with DeWine, but all the great information about public health and climate change and utility corruption and what we're doing to push pro-democracy efforts here in Ohio. So this is a time we know where we need everybody to pitch in. And so go over to ohiocitizen.org and join us, because every voice counts with us.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Lisa, and hopefully we'll be talking to you some more in the future.
All right. That sounds good, Joe. Thanks so much for having me back. I appreciate it.
Sure.
All right, that was Lisa Maatz with Ohio Citizen Action. And now it's time to hear from our wonderful patrons and sponsors. For Green Futures, brought to you by the Wood County Park District. The Wood County Park District is a natural resources conservation agency. They protect natural spaces, maintain quality green spaces, provide engaging programming, and they teach people to love and respect nature. They restore wildlife habitats, and they lead people on outdoor adventures. Wood County Parks protects natural spaces in Wood County for all to enjoy, from 8 a.m. to 30 minutes past sunset every day of the year. And there's several ways to get a hold of them. One is to give them a call at 419-353-1897. That's 419-353-1897. Another is to go to their website, which is simply wcparks.org. And they have a nifty app that you can download from any nifty app store. Just search for WC Parks. And of course, they're on all the social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc., etc., etc. That's the Wood County Park District. And this week, For Green Futures also brought to you by walking. Yes, walking, the preferred method of transportation for human beings for approximately 3 million years. Walking can get you where you need to go. And how many times have you fired up your multi-ton vehicle to go 4 or 5 blocks and burned all that gas and didn't get the benefit of walking, which we are actually designed to walk. And they say that one of the best predictors if you're going to have a long, healthy life is, do you walk at least 10 minutes or 20 minutes a day? And so it helps you, it helps the environment. Next time you got that kind of medium length trip there, consider walking instead of burning fossil fuels to get
As
there.
opposed to taking your car to the gym.
Yes.
Just do a couple push-ups and walk.
Right. Maybe you could just walk to the gym and
There you go.
know,
And then walk home.
then just walk home again.
Yeah, there
you
go.
did it. Right.
Yeah.
So
Don't even have to go in.
right. Yeah, you could save money on the gym subscription.
Just
Just walk to the gym, touch the door. I made it,
There you
and
go.
I've gone to the gym
Yes, I went to the gym.
and then back home. All right, and For Green Futures, of course, is also brought to you by our incredibly foresighted people, our patrons. And these are people who've gone to patreon.com, that's Patreon. They searched for A Green Future. Our well-designed Patreon page popped up, and they picked a level that met their budget and doesn't hurt, because we don't advocate pain. This is a program that promotes nonviolence. And so a little bit comes out of their account every month, comes over to us, and that's how we could afford to keep bringing For a Green Future to you every week. So thank you so much to our wonderful patrons. Won't you consider joining them? Okay, Rebecca, now it's on to a topic where we won't hopefully get bogged down.
Yeah,
Yes,
there we go.
Yeah. You're going to talk about bogs.
I am, yeah. Well, this it sort of came out of a story, a letter that my uncle who lives in Massachusetts sent me. Apparently, he was going to go explore this little pond called Poutwater Pond in Holden, and see whether the blueberries were ripe yet. So, Poutwater Pond is, I believe, located in Holden, Massachusetts, pretty close to the border with Princeton. According to the Princeton, Massachusetts website, it's accessible via a 3 or 4 mile hike from Princeton, starting at the Thompson Gardens Trailhead, or also from the Thomas Preschool, SD Road, or Holden Road, which is called Sterling Road in Massachusetts, and there's a Holden Sterling Trailhead. The trails are apparently on the property of the Department of Conservation and Resources of the state of Massachusetts. Not well marked though, so you gotta maybe bring your GPS device with you and or a map, and you gotta skirt some fields. Apparently, there's a place where there's a trail and a gate, and then you go off of that, and then you go around the edge of some fields and through a little forest, and because it's DCR, there's no dogs or bikes allowed. You can wear snowshoes or skis in the winter, and long pants, because there's poison ivy, are a good idea. So, yeah, so my uncle, it was actually kind of a slightly hilarious letter. He goes there, he's going to go look for the blueberries. So, he just sort of hikes through the woods for a while, sees arrowroot, swamp honeysuckle, horned bladderwort, Indian pipes, and meadowsweet. So, and according to the Holden, the Princeton website, there's they also have orchids. That bog has orchids in it.
Ooh.
So that's kind of cool. Sees a lot of frogs, a lot of dragonflies. So, and mind you, Uncle David has he carries an entire library on his back, so he can identify everything. So he probably knows what he is talking about. And also, it's kind of amazing he didn't just sink completely into the bog with all the books in his backpack. I worry about that. But yeah, so he goes and he has a little lunch. On top of a beaver lodge. And then after that, things get interesting. After lunch, I decided to see if I could circle around and cut through the swamp to get out to the floating mat of vegetation that encircles the bog. In the upshot, I spent several hours clawing my way through the dense and tangled underbrush in search of that floating bog habitat. I guess maybe that's where the blueberries were supposed to be. I don't know. It crossed my mind there, or maybe not. They don't grow in swamps.
Blueberries?
Maybe close to, yeah.
Oh yeah, they do.
Okay, well, it crossed my mind that if I didn't get out of there by dark, people would never find me. Eventually, I came out on dry land and a less tangled forest landscape. Thereupon, I spent some time going back and forth along the edge of the bog, looking for the path to my car. At length, I realized that I was thoroughly disoriented and did not know which way to go to get back to the car, disconcerting to say the least. After a little more zigzagging along the edge of the bog, I decided I would have to follow a compass bearing southward, which would bring me out somewhere near the road. So, yeah, Uncle David got home. He does not live in the swamp. All this is a little hilarious when you realize that he's this big semi-professional outdoorsman who belongs to a hiking club that goes on trips to the Pyrenees and leads hikes sometimes. But he's the kind of guy who I'm pretty sure from observation has to know all that stuff about compasses and moss on the trees and how to make a little compass out of a leaf and some water and a pin, because he has a really bad natural sense of direction. I've seen it. It's really pathetic. Like he doesn't understand that if you're going around a point in a circle and you reverse your direction and go counterclockwise, you will get back to where you were, for example. Based on, like, just, yeah, a lot of books. He does all right. Don't blame me. He does good. But yeah. So, yeah. Which got me into a little bit of a rabbit hole about, I think he's using swamp and bog interchangeably there.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there's somehow a bog in the middle of a swamp, which seems improbable.
No, you can have bogs in the middle of swamps.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess maybe one is higher because it's the definition of
Well, the bog, the floating bog.
Right.
That happens when the vegetation, after years and years, starts building up on the surface of a body of water, and so it makes this literal floating land that you could walk on. But the trees will actually kind of bob along with you and
right,
go back and forth.
Exciting, yeah.
Because you're walking on this surface which is literally floating on the water. So you can be in a swamp and then it can change to bog and then back to swamp again.
Maybe so, but anyway, I looked up because I realized that I was not sure how he was using those two words, and I didn't know the difference anyway. So apparently a swamp is a forested wetland. It's low. It's lower than the rest of the surrounding land. It's fed by rivers, and there's usually some drainage to a swamp, whereas bogs are usually above everything else. They're higher up. They produce peat. That's part of the definition of a bog. Higher than the surrounding land, and they're fed strictly by precipitation and have no outflow, because apparently they tend to happen when moss, peat moss, maybe other kinds of moss just builds up and either completely covers the water or seals it all in somehow and won't let the water escape. And there's bogs in front of us. Sphagnum moss filling up and growing over lakes or ponds, and it's called paludification when that happens. Ooh. Paludification.
I did not know that word.
So yeah, if you had some like higher land within a swamp, that could be a bog, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, just learned something new, and my uncle was in his 70s, survived apparently, so that was good. Well, it sounds like a cool area also.
It is cool to walk on a floating bog as the land kind of undulates around you, but I do have 2 instances in my life where I was doing that. I was walking on a floating bog and my foot broke through, and all of a sudden, I'll never forget that sensation of being on quote unquote ground, and then your foot breaks through, and all of a sudden it's kind of swimming around in nothing. It's like,
whoopsie, let it go bye-bye.
Right. And it makes you realize that if you break through that floating vegetation to go into the water, it doesn't necessarily make a nice round hole that you can then just pop back up, and it kind of makes a tear.
Yeah.
And you can sort of go under that and be in like complete darkness just in water.
Yeah.
And not sure how you got under there, and you've only got that minute or so to figure out how to get back out. People do disappear into bogs.
In Manhattan Marsh in Toledo, I found one time I went there to some people clean it up in the fall when it's kind of dried up. I found some sort of grass, some bouncy grass in the middle of it, and also I found some quicksand with my foot.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Luckily, my other foot was still on something. It was on a big log, so I just kind of used my left leg to pop my right foot out, and it came out of the boot, which I didn't had to retrieve. And
right.
So I was going down fast though. It was really kind of alarming.
Yeah, you tend to never forget those experiences. It happened memorable. To me once in the Adirondacks when I was literally way out and walking by myself. I left the folks at the campground. I'm going to take a hike by myself, and so. Had I broken through there, I wouldn't have gotten back. And then the other happened, there's a bog very close to my parents' house in Elba, New York, which had a trail through it. And actually trails through bogs are not good ideas because you kind of keep wearing the bog out. But
Right.
yeah, all right. Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Rebecca.
I should probably note that he was writing that dramatic style because he knows I like morbid YouTube videos about terrible things happening in the wilderness. I've been in the wilderness. I know these experiences are not typical. You're probably not going to break your ankle and die in a canyon, or have a Wendigo attack you. But I still like them because I'm not okay.
All right. Well, okay. Well, on to ecological news now. And let's see. Our first story is one that you may have actually seen on the mainstream media, and that is our story about Joe Manchin. And Joe Manchin blew up the agenda for climate change this past week. Probably everybody's forgot about it, but back when they passed the first section of the Build Back Better bill, they were supposedly going to negotiate and come back and do another bill that mentioned climate change and things like that. And so all this time there have been Democrats and NGOs, non-governmental organizations, negotiating frantically with Joe Manchin, trying to get some sort of climate stuff passed. And he's been leading them along. He's been, just messing with them, and for a year and a half now. And finally he got tired of it. So this past Thursday he said, yeah, forget it.
Yeah.
There won't be any agreement. And the thing is that, I knew this was going to happen. It was so obvious. Joe Manchin is a coal baron. He's a millionaire because he sells coal to people. And so he's not going to pass any kind of legislation that's going to help get us off of coal. The negotiators should have known that, the villains, if they've watched any kind of, read any comic books or, watched any kind of movies, villains will take everything you give them in negotiations. He's literally the chair of the Energy and Natural Resources Committee in the Senate. And, he'll take everything you give him and then kill the hostages anyway, then do the evil thing anyway. And so the thing is, I believe that this is actually, he's giving cover to all those corporate Democrats who also take donations from coal companies and oil companies and so forth. And now they don't have to do anything because Joe Manchin has done it for them. And the reason I think that this is kind of like all of a show is, well, first of all, he did, in the first part of the Build Back Better that did pass, they put $6 billion in there for nuclear power. And just as a comparison, they only put $56 million for solar power. So that it's clear what they want as opposed to what we need. But this is a technique that Democrats have used all the way back, since the days of Bill Clinton, when they had GATT, General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, and opened up free trade with China. Everybody was upset back then because China had no environmental standards, it had no labor standards. They used slave labor. They dumped all their stuff right into the waterways. And Clinton said, "Oh, well, don't worry, we'll pass this, and then we'll do side agreements. We'll do environmental and labor side agreements."
And then they don't.
We're still
Standard playbook.
We're still waiting.
Oh, this is just the basic bill. We're gonna make it better later, and then they don't.
Right. And as I say, the reason I'm so certain that this was the plan all along, and that this was just a case of really bad acting, is because he is not going to get any punishment from the Democratic Party leadership. He will not lose his chair. He will not lose any committee assignments. He will not be demoted in any way. He'll suffer literally no consequences for supposedly blowing up the Democratic Party agenda. And the Republicans, evil as they are in terms of environmental policy, they stay together as a bloc because they know that if they buck what the party wants, they'll be primaried, they'll lose their seats on committees, they'll be punished, there will be consequences. Joe Manchin will suffer no punishment and no consequences for supposedly, in the words of some NGOs, betraying all our future generations and dooming us to climate change. So that is our lead story. So we got to follow that up with some good news, right?
Yes. Please.
Okay.
We can't take very much more.
All right, well, here it is. Here's the good news. In the first 4 months of 2022, wind power and solar power outproduced nuclear energy.
Woohoo!
So all those pro-nukers who say, oh, wind and solar are a good idea, but they don't generate practical amounts of power, you're wrong. In fact, we just whipped your butt the first 4 months of 2022. So, oh, poor nuclear power. Too bad you can't produce enough power to really be that important in the country's energy mix.
Dangerous and inefficient too. Double winner.
Yep.
Expensive.
So this is all as a result of a report put out by the Energy Information Agency, which I must say went to great lengths to sort of obfuscate this fact in their monthly reporting. They're like required to make monthly reports on what different kinds of energy we're doing and how much and how many megawatt hours and all that stuff. But you really had to dive into the graphs and like pluck out numbers in order to figure this out. And it's been covered by a number of different organizations, including Clean Technica, who did a story on it on the 15th. More electricity from wind and solar than nuclear for first time in USA. And to get specific here, nuclear produced 250,000 megawatt hours, or 250,000 megawatt hours of electricity in the first in April. Wind provided 165,800. Solar, utility scale solar provided 42,580. And then for the first time, actually, and this actually should have been the headline on the story, or at least it should have been prominent, and I kind of had to tease it out for myself. And that is the Energy Information Agency has finally started including small scale solar in their calculations. And so that includes like rooftop solar, like I've got, little tiny fields that people have in their backyards, maybe 5 kilowatts, 10 kilowatts, maybe 20 kilowatts of power. And all that has been building up for years and years and has never been counted. Well, finally they're counting it. And it turns out that small scale solar produced about 17,500 megawatt hours in April, which is more than half, or let's see, almost half of what the utility scale produced. So altogether, wind, utility scale solar, and small scale solar produced 255,875 megawatt hours in April, and so that's 5,000 more than nuclear did. So, nuclear, your day has come, yeah. And it's something that was inevitable. I mean, those of us who've been fighting nukes for years and promoting wind and solar for years we've always known that it had the potential to outproduce wind, or to outproduce nuclear, to outproduce coal, and so forth. Let's see, so this is something that was coming. We've known it was coming, and actually it came despite insufficient support from the government, because people like Joe Manchin have been sitting there for decades now blocking as much government support as they could for nuclear power, or for wind and solar power, and literally he cut it out of the first iteration of the Build Back Better. But it's been winning anyway, because it's cleaner, it's safer, it's cheaper, it goes up quicker, it's a better investment, it's a safer investment. And so, but you wouldn't know this if you go to the EIA, Energy Information Agency's main page. It's all about how much coal we produced, how much oil we produced, how we're increasing the amount of oil that we're pumping out of the ground. No mention of this historic year of the first quarter of 2022, where wind and solar finally kicked nuclear's butt. And just a heads up, nuclear, you're going to get a lot more butt kicking in the future, because your plants are crashing, they're shutting down daily, and wind and solar continues to go up daily because it's better. And so that's some good news. All right, now some interesting news. We got to kind of pick up the pace here a little bit. Although we will take a call at 877-909-1007 at any time. Okay, this is a story which kind of went under the radar, but is very interesting. It came out on July 14th from the Ohio Capital Journal, written by Jake Zuckerman. Title: Judge Boots First Energy Lawyer. And what's happened?
Did he literally boot them? Because I would like to see that.
Maybe they boot him. Ohio Capitol Journal is usually very accurate, so it's possible that there was actual booting involved.
Yay.
So anyway, way back, again, coming back to House Bill 6, when that bribery scandal broke and First Energy stocks crashed, stockholders brought a suit. They sued First Energy for wrecking their investments, which is not unusual in these days. But here is what is unusual. U.S. District Judge John Adams basically booted them for, quote unquote, failure to diligently prosecute. And what that means is that the lawyers for the plaintiffs, the lawyers for the stockholders, literally didn't do anything. They didn't interview witnesses, they didn't review evidence, they didn't do fact finding. All they did was go to First Energy and say, okay, how much do you want to pay us? And First Energy said, we'll give you $180 million. And the lawyer said, okay, we'll take that.
Alrighty then.
And the judge, John Adams, since this has been going, has been like, look, this is a lawsuit.
Right, yeah.
You're
It's not
supposed,
how it
as
works.
lawyers, you're supposed to collect information and use that information to get money for your clients. And instead, like I say, they just went and cut a deal with First Energy. Oh, and as part of that deal, the lawyers, would get $49 million of that $180 million.
For doing nothing.
For doing
yeah,
pretty much
sweet
nothing.
gig.
Yeah,
Why can't I get jobs like that?
A very good question.
Apparently, you don't actually need a law degree. You just know to, say hi.
Well, no, you got to have a law degree.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
kind of
okay.
like,
But they
kinda
didn't
like
seem
the
to have
driver's
actually
license.
used it.
No, they didn't seem to have used it. And so the judge has taken the unusual step of literally booting the lawyers off the case and saying, you are no longer representing the stockholders. And he's opened it up. So if there's any lawyers listening and you're looking for work and you want to have the opportunity to really stick it to First Energy, you have until July 25th to apply. And, it's literally been opened up to any lawyers who want to come in and do this. And it looks like it's going to be pretty lucrative no matter how you do it, because, the lawyers who didn't do anything were going to get $49 million. So if you're a lawyer who's going to do something, and that is an important point. They're settling for that $180 million, but it's entirely possible with proper lawyering, they could have gotten like $250 million, or maybe even $500 million for their clients, and instead of just cutting this deal with First Energy. And the motivation for the judge has always been to figure out, he wants to know who broke the law, how much did they benefit from it. And he's very famous. At one point in the proceedings, he asked all the attorneys, he said, who paid the bribe? And no one answered him. No one could answer him, because there was no, even though First Energy has admitted publicly and paid a fine for giving bribes, First Energy has said, we bribed Householder, we bribed Sam Randazzo. Even though they said they bribed, they didn't say who paid the bribes. And so both the lawyers, old lawyers, and First Energy moved to dismiss the case because they said, we've got a deal, we don't even need to go to trial or do anything. And the judge refused to accept their motion to dismiss and instead dismissed the lawyers. So,
again, ha.
Yeah, so congratulations to Judge John Adams. We really have to give you a thumbs up, 2 thumbs up.
Nice
because,
integrity there, buddy.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. It's kind of inspiring. So, in these days when there's so little inspiring things happening. So, all right. Well, our final story. Unfortunately, we got to go back to sad news, and that is France and Spain are burning. Right now, there's a fire going on where at least 25,000 acres have already burned. There's 14,000 people have been evacuated, and it's a big, nasty thing because they're having an incredible heat wave in France right now, which has made everything tinder dry. And this, once again, this is the kind of stuff we environmentalists predicted would happen. It's happening, and so listen to us now when we're predicting other things in the future. And just one interesting little thing about this, that I do speak French. My wife was a Francophile, so she forced me to speak French in our house all the time, which, you know, I was willing to do. But the French word for firefighter, which is one of my favorite French words, is pompier. So the pompiers are out there battling this 25,000 acre blaze, and they have not yet got it in any way contained. It's still burning out of control. So our thoughts go to the people in France, and hope none of these fires hit any of their nuke plants, which that would be like a quadruple disaster.
Really good if they did not, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that just about brings us to the end of the show. So thanks so much for listening. If you want to comment, you can send an email to joe@joedemar@greenfuture.org, or you can send a text to 419-973-5841. It's been a great show. I'm glad I got to talk to you folks. This is Joe DeMare.
And Rebecca Wood.
And we are signing off.
Undone, give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!